They walked right past him. Dozens of high-ranking wolves, proud warriors and wealthy elites, they all stepped over the bleeding, muddy bundle of fur shivering in the rain like he was nothing but trash. But one person stopped. One person who had nothing left to give, gave everything she had. Tessa, the pack's rejected omega, scooped that pup up, unaware that the eyes of the most dangerous man in the world were watching her from the tree line. She thought she was saving a stray. She didn't know she was saving the future of the werewolf kingdom and sealing the fate of everyone who had ever hurt her. This is the story of how a rejected outcast became the queen of them all. The rain in the territory of the Cold River Pack didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime stick harder. It was a freezing, relentless downpour that turned the dirt roads into sludge and soaked through even the thickest coats. Tessa pulled the collar of her threadbare denim jacket tighter around her neck, her boots squelching in the mud. She kept her head down. It was the only way to survive in Cold River. Eye contact was viewed as a challenge, and a challenge from an omega like her was punishable by a beating, or worse. Earlier that morning, her life had officially crumbled. She could still hear the voice of Caleb, the Alpha's son, echoing in her ears. He stood in the center of the town square, his arm draped around Bianca, a high-ranking beta female with vicious eyes and expensive taste. "I, Caleb Miller, reject you, Tessa Hart, as my mate," he had announced, his voice bored, as if he were reading a grocery list. "You are wolfless poor, and an embarrassment to my lineage. I need a Luna who can lead, not a charity case." The snap of the mate bond breaking hadn't been a sharp pain. It had been a dull, hollow ache, like a cavity in her chest where her heart used to be. The pack had laughed. Bianca had smirked, inspecting her manicured nails, and Tessa had done what she always did. She swallowed the humiliation, bowed her head, and walked away. Now, hours later, she was walking back from the night shift at the diner, carrying a paper bag with leftovers, 2 stale buns and a piece of cold chicken. It was her dinner for the next 2 days. As she passed the alleyway behind the opulent pack house, where the music of Caleb's engagement party was thumping through the walls, she heard it. A whimper. It was faint, barely audible over the drumming rain and the bass of the music. Tessa paused. Most wolves in Cold River would have kept walking. Compassion was considered a weakness here. The pack motto was strength above all. But Tessa turned. Huddled against the overflow of the garbage dumpsters, half submerged in a puddle of oily water, was a wolf pup. It wasn't a newborn, perhaps 6 or 7 months old, but it was small, emaciated, and trembling so violently its teeth chattered. Its fur, which might have been a striking silver, was matted with mud and dried blood. A deep gash ran along its flank, looking dangerously infected. Tessa gasped, dropping to her knees in the mud, ignoring the cold water soaking her jeans. "Hey there," she whispered, her voice cracking. "It's okay. I'm not going to hurt you." The pup flinched, letting out a low, defensive growl, but it was too weak to back away. Its eyes opened, startling, intelligent amber eyes that seemed too old for such a small creature. Tessa looked around. Hundreds of pack members had passed this spot to get into the party. The expensive SUVs, the warriors on patrol, they had all passed this suffering creature. They had all ignored it. "Did they leave you here?" Tessa murmured, anger flaring in her chest, a rare emotion for her. She reached into a paper bag and pulled out the cold chicken. It was the only protein she had eaten in 3 days. She didn't hesitate. She tore a piece off and offered it. The pup sniffed it, hesitated, and then wolfed it down. "I can't leave you here," Tessa said, looking at the gash on its side. The frost is coming tonight. You'll be dead by morning. She knew the rules. Omegas were forbidden from bringing strays into the pack territory. If Caleb found out, she would be exiled to the rogue lands, which was a death sentence. She looked at the warm, glowing windows of the pack house, where they were celebrating her rejection. Then she looked at the shivering, dying pup. "Screw them," she whispered. She unzipped her jacket, shivering as the freezing rain hit her thin t-shirt. She scooped the muddy, bloody pup into her arms, tucked him inside her jacket, and zipped it up halfway so his head could stick out. He was heavier than he looked, dense with muscle despite the starvation. "Hold on," she told him. "I've got a warm fire. It's not much, but it's better than this." She began the long trek to the outskirts of the territory, to the dilapidated shack she called home. She didn't see the black SUV parked 50 yards away, hidden in the shadows of the tree line. The engine was off, the windows tinted pitch black. Inside, a man sat in the driver's seat. He wasn't just a man. The aura radiating off him was so potent, the air around the car seemed to distort. He had watched the entire scene. He had watched his own pack warriors ignore the injured pup. He had watched the wealthy elite kick mud at it. And he had watched the girl with the sawed eyes and the broken heart give up her own coat and food. "Find out who she is," the man said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated through the chassis of the car. "Yes, Alpha King," the driver replied, typing rapidly on a tablet. Gideon, the Alpha King, narrowed his eyes as he watched Tessa disappear into the rain. "And keep a surveillance team on her house. If anyone touches her, I want their hand removed." Tessa's cabin was essentially a glorified shed, located on the very edge of the boundary lines. The wind whistled through the gaps in the wooden planks, and the roof leaked in 3 places, requiring a strategic arrangement of buckets. But it was dry, and once she got the wood stove going, it was warm. She laid the pup on a pile of old blankets near the stove. The firelight cast dancing shadows on the walls. Now that they were out of the rain, she could see the damage clearly. The gash on the pup's flank was jagged, likely from a rogue attack or a trap. "This is going to sting," Tessa said softly. She went to her small bathroom cabinet. She didn't have magical healing salves or expensive potions. Those were reserved for the ranked wolves. She had a bottle of generic rubbing alcohol, a needle, and some fishing line. The pup watched her. He didn't take his amber eyes off her face. There was something unnerving about his gaze. It was analyzing her. "I'm sorry, I don't have any numbing cream," she apologized, soaking a rag in the alcohol. She expected him to snap at her when she cleaned the wound. Instead, the pup just let out a sharp huff of breath and endured it. He remained perfectly still as she stitched the wound closed with the fishing line, her hand steady despite her exhaustion. "You're a brave little guy, aren't you?" she murmured, tying off the last knot. She gently wiped the mud from his face with a warm cloth. Underneath the filth, his fur was a beautiful, shimmering mix of silver and charcoal. "I'm going to call you Ash, because you rose out of the garbage like a phoenix from ashes. Cheesy, I know." Ash let out a sound that sounded suspiciously like a snort of derision. Tessa laughed, a soft, rusty sound. "Okay, Ash it is." She heated up a can of soup, her emergency ration, and poured it into a bowl for him. She drank the broth herself and gave him the vegetables and meat. "Eat up. You need to heal." As the adrenaline wore off, the reality of her day crashed back down on her. Caleb's rejection, the public humiliation, the bleak future staring her in the face. She sat on the floor next to the sleeping pup, pulling her knees to her chest. "I don't know why I'm crying," she whispered to the empty room. "He was a jerk. He cheated on me constantly. I should be happy." But it wasn't about Caleb. It was about belonging. It was about the fact that she had tried so hard, worked double shifts, kept her head down, and obeyed every law, and she was still treated like a disease. Tessa fell asleep on the floor, her hand resting on the pup's fur. Outside, in the pouring rain, a figure stood by the window. Gideon stood perfectly still, the water running off his black trench coat. His senses were dialed to the maximum. He could hear her heartbeat slowing as she fell into a deep sleep. He could smell the antiseptic, the wood smoke, and the underlying scent of her. Vanilla and rain. He looked at the pup, sleeping beside her. "Report!" Gideon mind-linked the wolf inside. The pup didn't wake up, but his mind responded instantly. "She's clean, brother. She has no hidden agenda. She gave me her last portion of food. She stitched me up with fishing line." Gideon clenched his jaw. The pup was actually Liam, his younger brother and the general of the Royal Army. Liam had been cursed by a witch of the Southern Covens 3 days ago, trapped in a juvenile wolf form, unable to shift back or speak until he was cared for by a heart that expects nothing. They had travelled to Cold River to test the alpha there, to see if the pack was worthy of the king's investment. Liam had positioned himself in the town square, injured and pathetic, as a test. Every single member of the Cold River leadership had failed. They had kicked him, spat on him, or ignored him. Except for the girl with nothing. "She is the one," Liam projected. "The curse is fading. I can feel my energy returning. One more night of rest here, and I should be able to shift back." "Good," Gideon replied. "Rest, brother. I will stand guard." Gideon turned his back to the window, facing the dark forest. His eyes glowed a lethal crimson red. Tomorrow, Caleb Miller and the Cold River Pack were going to have a very bad day. They had rejected the only thing of value in their entire territory, and Gideon was going to make sure they realized exactly what they had lost. But first, he had to deal with the intruders. Gideon's ears twitched. 200 yards away, 3 rogue wolves were creeping toward the cabin, drawn by the scent of fresh blood from the pup's wound. Gideon didn't shift. He didn't need to. He simply rolled his shoulders and stepped into the shadows. The king needed to vent some frustration, and these rogues were about to become the unfortunate recipients of his rage. Sunlight streamed through the cracks in the walls, hitting Tessa directly in the face. She groaned, her back stiff from sleeping on the hardwood floor. She sat up, panic flaring instantly. The pup. She looked to her side. The blankets were empty. "Ash!" she called out, scrambling to her feet. "Ash!" Her heart hammered against her ribs. Had he run away? Had he died? "I'm here," a deep, velvety voice said from the kitchen corner. Tessa screamed, grabbing the heavy iron poker from the fireplace and spinning around. Sitting at her tiny, wobbly kitchen table was a man. And not just any man. He was huge, easily 6'4", with broad shoulders that strained against the fabric of... Well, he was naked from the waist up, wearing a pair of sweatpants she recognized as her ex-boyfriend's old ones she used for cleaning rags. They were comically tight on him. He had messy silver hair and piercing amber eyes. "Who are you?" Tessa demanded, brandishing the poker. "How did you get in here? Where is the wolf?" The man took a sip from her favorite chipped mug. "The coffee is stale, Tessa. We need to get you better beans." "Answer me." The man set the mug down and pointed to his side. There, on his human skin, was a fresh, pink scar, stitched together with blue fishing line. Tessa dropped the poker. It clattered loudly on the floor. "Ash," she whispered. "My name is Liam," the man said, standing up. He moved with a predatory grace that made the small cabin feel claustrophobic. "And I owe you my life. But right now, we have a bigger problem. Problem? Tessa stammered, her brain unable to process that the cute puppy she cuddled was this towering god of a man. Yes, Liam said, his face hardening. He walked to the window and peered out through the curtains. My brother is outside, and he's currently stopping your alpha from burning this house down. Tessa rushed to the window. Outside, the scene was chaos. 3 black SUVs blocked the dirt driveway. Caleb was there, along with his father, Alpha Marcus, and Bianca. They looked furious. But standing between the cabin and the pack leadership was a single man in a black trench coat. He stood with his hands in his pockets, looking bored. "Who is that?" Tessa asked. Liam smirked. "That's Gideon, the Alpha King, and he looks annoyed." Tessa's blood ran cold. The Alpha King? In her front yard? Why are they here? "Because," Liam turned to her, his expression softening, "you broke the law by harboring a stray. Caleb is here to arrest you and exile you. But he's about to find out that the stray is the prince of the kingdom, and the man protecting you is the king who saw everything." Liam walked over to Tessa and gently took her hand. His skin was burning hot. "Do not be afraid, Tessa. Yesterday they treated you like trash. Today they are going to learn that you are the most protected woman in the world. Are you ready to go out there?" Tessa looked at her worn-out clothes, her dirty fingernails, and then at the powerful man holding her hand. She took a deep breath. "If I'm going to be exiled," she said, lifting her chin, "I'm going to do it with my head up." Liam grinned, a wolfish, dangerous smile. "Oh, you aren't going to be exiled, darling. You're going to be entertained. Let's go." Liam kicked the door open. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the air heavy with the scent of wet pine and ozone. The driveway of Tessa's shack, usually empty save for the occasional squirrel, was now a theatre of war. Alpha Marcus stood at the front of his entourage, his chest puffed out. He was a large man, accustomed to being the biggest predator in the room, but he looked noticeably smaller standing opposite the stranger in the black trench coat. Behind Marcus stood Caleb, looking impatient, and Bianca, who was shivering in her strapless party dress, her heels sinking into the mud. "I gave you an order," Marcus barked at the stranger, though his voice wavered slightly. "Step aside. That girl is harboring an unauthorized rogue wolf. By the laws of the Cold River Pack, she is to be detained and the beast destroyed." Gideon didn't blink. He didn't even shift his stance. He simply looked at Marcus with an expression of profound boredom, as if he were watching paint dry. "The laws of Cold River," Gideon repeated, his voice smooth and dark, like velvet over gravel. "Interesting. And tell me, Alpha Marcus, do your laws also dictate that you leave injured travelers to die in the gutter?" Marcus sneered. "Weakness is a disease. We cull the weak here." "Is that so?" Gideon tilted his head. At that moment, the front door of the shack creaked open. Every head turned. Caleb rolled his eyes, stepping forward. "Finally, Tessa, stop hiding and bring out the mutt. Maybe if you beg, my father will let you leave with just a branding instead of exile." Tessa stepped onto the rotting porch. She wore her faded jeans and a t-shirt, but she stood differently. Her spine was straight, her chin lifted. She looked Caleb dead in the eye, and for the first time in years, she didn't look down. "I won't be begging, Caleb," she said, her voice steady. "And I won't be handing anyone over." Caleb laughed, a harsh, barking sound. "You think you have a choice? You're an Omega. You're nothing." "She is not nothing," a voice boomed from the doorway behind her. Liam stepped out into the light. The transformation from the muddy, shivering pup to the prince of the realm was jarring. He towered over Tessa, his shirtless torso displaying the power of a warrior in his prime. The scar on his flank was visible, the blue fishing line a stark contrast against his skin. The gasps from the cold river wolves were audible. They could smell it now. The sheer potency of his bloodline. It rolled off him in waves, suppressing the aura of every other wolf in the clearing. Caleb stumbled back, his face draining of color. Who are you? Liam descended the stairs, his boots crunching on the gravel. He walked right up to the boundary line, stopping inches from Alpha Marcus. I am the mutt you kicked on your way to the buffet, Marcus, Liam snarled, his eyes flashing the amber. I am the trash your son laughed at. And I am Liam Blackwood, General of the Royal Army and Prince of the Northern Territories. Silence descended on the clearing. It was absolute and terrified. Alpha Marcus's knees visibly shook. Prince! Liam? And that, Liam pointed to the man in the trench coat, is my brother. The realization hit them like a physical blow. Caleb looked at the man he had been shouting at, the man with the crimson eyes. King Gideon, Caleb whispered, horror dawning on him. Gideon finally moved. He took one step forward, and the pressure in the air increased tenfold. It was the Alpha command, amplified by royal blood. Kneel, Gideon said softly. It wasn't a request. It was a biological imperative. Alpha Marcus, Caleb, Bianca, and the dozen warriors behind them slammed into the mud. They didn't do it willingly. Their wolves forced them down, exposing their necks in submission to the apex predator. Bianca let out a sob, her expensive dress ruined in the muck. Caleb was trembling so hard his teeth rattled. Gideon walked slowly through the kneeling wolves, inspecting them like one would inspect a row of rotten vegetables. He stopped in front of Caleb. You rejected her, Gideon said, gesturing to Tessa, who was watching from the porch, stunned. My king, Caleb stammered, staring at the mud. She is an omega. She has no wolf. She is worthless to the pack. Worthless? Gideon let out a dry, humorless chuckle. My brother lay dying in your town square. A curse bound him, stripping him of his power. Only a heart of pure gold, a heart that expected no reward, could break that curse. Hundreds of your elites passed him by. You kicked him. Gideon leaned down, grabbing Caleb by the hair and forcing him to look up. Caleb's eyes were wide with terror. This woman, Gideon continued, his voice rising to a roar that shook the trees, gave him the coat off her back. She gave him her last meal. She is the only reason your prince is alive today. She possesses more nobility in her little finger than you have in your entire bloodline. Gideon released Caleb, who collapsed face first into the dirt. Tessa Hart, Gideon called out, turning to face her. Tessa froze. The king was speaking to her. She instinctively moved to kneel, but Gideon held up a hand. Do not kneel to me, he commanded, gentle but firm. You are the savior of the blood. No one will ever look down on you again. He turned back to the groveling pack. Alpha Marcus, you are stripped of your title immediately. You will be taken into custody for negligence and attempted regicide by omission. No, Marcus cried out, but two of the king's royal guards, who had materialized from the shadows of the forest, dragged him away. Caleb, Gideon said, his eyes cold, you wanted a Luna who could lead? You don't deserve to be led. You are stripped of your rank. You will serve the pack as an omega. You will clean the latrines. You will eat the scraps. And if you ever speak to Tessa again, I will take your tongue. Caleb sobbed, curling into a ball. Bianca tried to crawl away, but Gideon's gaze pinned her. And you, Gideon said to Bianca, you like pretty things? You like status? You are banished from the inner circle. You will work in the mines until you understand the value of hard labor. Gideon walked up to the porch. He towered over Tessa, but his crimson eyes swirled with something that wasn't anger. It was curiosity and hunger. "Pack your things, Tessa," Gideon said. "You aren't staying in this shack anymore." "Where am I going?" Tessa asked, her voice barely a whisper. "You're coming to the pack house," Gideon replied. "I'm taking over this territory until I sort out this mess, and you are going to be my personal guest." The Cold River Pack house was a sprawling mansion of stone and glass, a monument to wealth that Tessa had only ever seen from the service entrance. She had scrubbed its floors and washed its dishes, but she had never been allowed in the front door. Today, the royal guards held the double doors open for her. She walked into the grand foyer, still wearing her muddy boots. The staff, people who had sneered at her yesterday, bowed low as she passed. It was surreal. It felt like a dream she was afraid to wake up from. "This way," Liam said, guiding her with a gentle hand on her back. He had showered and changed into clothes that had been brought by the royal convoy, looking every bit the prince he was. "Gideon has set you up in the Emerald Suite." "The Emerald Suite?" Tessa balked. "That's reserved for visiting dignitaries." "You are a dignitary now," Liam winked. "You saved my life, Ash. Remember?" Tessa flushed at the nickname. They reached the suite, a room larger than her entire shack. It had a 4-poster bed, a fireplace roaring with warmth, and a balcony overlooking the forest. "Rest," Liam said. "Dinner is in 2 hours. Gideon wants you there." Once alone, Tessa sank onto the bed. The silk sheets felt cool against her skin. She stared at the ceiling, her mind racing. Gideon, the Alpha King. Every time he looked at her, her skin prickled. It wasn't just fear, it was a magnetic pull, a deep, resonant hum in her blood that she had never felt before. She didn't have a wolf. Her inner wolf had gone dormant when she was a child due to malnutrition and trauma, so she couldn't sense if he was her mate. But her human soul seemed to recognize him. Meanwhile, in the Alpha's private office downstairs, the atmosphere was lethal. Gideon stood behind the massive oak desk, reading through the Cold River financial files. Liam sat on the leather sofa, nursing a glass of scotch. "The corruption runs deep," Gideon muttered, tossing a file onto the desk. "Marcus was embezzling funds, but that's not what worries me." "What worries you?" Liam asked. "The curse," Gideon said, turning to the window. "The witch who cursed you. She knew exactly where we would be. She knew our route. We were traveling incognito. Only 3 people knew our location." Liam sat up straighter, the playful demeanor vanishing. "You think there's a leak?" "I know there is," Gideon growled. "Someone wanted the royal line ended. They cursed you to be a helpless pup in a hostile territory, hoping the elements or the locals would kill you. It was a perfect assassination attempt. And Tessa ruined it," Liam realized. "Exactly." Gideon turned back, his eyes glowing. "By saving you, she didn't just annoy a few local bullies. She ruined the plans of a very powerful traitor, which means she is in danger." There was a knock at the door. One of Gideon's elite trackers, a woman named Elias, entered. "My king," Elias said, bowing. "We searched Tessa Hart's file as you requested. There are irregularities." Gideon frowned. "What kind of irregularities?" "Her birth certificate," Elias said, handing over a tablet. "It's a forgery. A good one, but a forgery nonetheless. She appeared in Cold River when she was 5 years old, brought in by an old Omega woman who claimed to be her grandmother. That woman died 2 years later." "So who is she?" Liam asked, standing up to look at the tablet. "We ran a genetic marker test from the hair she left on your coat, Prince Liam," Elias said. She hesitated, looking nervous. The results are encrypted. High-level clearance. Gideon took the tablet. He pressed his thumb to the screen to unlock the royal encryption. As the files loaded, his eyes widened. The color drained from his face, something Liam had never seen happen to his brother, not even in the fiercest battles. "Impossible," Gideon whispered. "What?" Liam asked. "Is she human?" "No." Gideon looked up, his expression unreadable. "She's not human, and she's not just an Omega. Liam, she has the marker of the Crescent Moon bloodline." Liam gasped. "The Crescent Moon? They were wiped out 20 years ago. The lost Alpha bloodline. The only wolves capable of—" "Spirit walking," Gideon finished, "and resisting Alpha command." "That explains why she didn't kneel," Liam murmured. "I thought it was just bravery. But she physically couldn't be forced to kneel by a lower Alpha like Marcus. Even your command, Gideon." She hesitated. "She doesn't know," Gideon said, pacing the room. "Her wolf is dormant. Someone locked it away to hide her, to protect her. If the people who tried to kill me find out who she is," Liam started, "they will come for her with everything they have." Gideon slammed his fist on the desk, splintering the wood. "We have to leave. Tonight. We're taking her to the royal city." "She won't go willingly," Liam warned. "She just got her home back. She thinks the danger is over." "Then I will have to be convincing," Gideon said. Upstairs, Tessa was just stepping out of the shower when the lights in the suite flickered and died. She froze, wrapping a towel around herself. "Hello?" The door to her balcony, which she had locked, slowly creaked open. The wind howled outside, extinguishing the fire in the hearth. A shadow moved in the corner of the room. It wasn't a wolf. It was a figure draped in a cloak of sewn-together raven feathers. The scent of sulphur and rotting flowers filled the room. "You should have left the puppy in the mud, girl," a raspy, female voice hissed from the darkness. Tessa backed away, grabbing a heavy brass lamp. "Who are you?" "I am the consequence of your kindness," the witch cackled. She raised a hand, and green energy crackled at her fingertips. "You ruined my work. Now, you pay the debt." The witch hurled a ball of green fire at Tessa. Tessa screamed and threw herself to the floor. The fire hit the bed, exploding the mattress in a shower of feathers and flame. The door to the suite exploded inward. Gideon was there. He didn't look like a king in a suit anymore. He was half-shifted, his claws fully extended, his eyes burning like twin suns. He moved with a speed that defied physics, placing himself between Tessa and the witch. The witch laughed. "The Alpha King! How convenient! 2 birds, 1 stone. Touch her!" Gideon roared, his voice shaking the foundations of the pack house. "And I will tear your soul apart." "Try it," the witch hissed. Gideon lunged. The air in the Emerald Suite had turned into a suffocating vortex of ozone and sulphur. The witch, a creature of rags and malice, hovered inches off the floor, her hands weaving patterns of sickly green light. Gideon didn't hesitate. He was a blur of lethal motion, his claws slashing through the magical barrier the witch had erected. The sound was like a thunderclap, a physical force meeting a magical, immovable object. The shockwave blew out the remaining windows, sending shards of glass raining into the stormy night. "You cannot stop what has been set in motion, King!" the witch shrieked. She thrust her hands forward, sending a serpentine lash of green energy wrapping around Gideon's throat. Gideon roared, the sound transitioning from human to wolf, a guttural vibration that shook the floorboards. The energy whip burned his skin, sizzling against his flesh. But he didn't back down. He gripped the whip with his bare hand, his own alpha aura, a deep, blood-red mist, warring with her green magic. Tessa scrambled backward, her back hitting the cold stone of the fireplace. She watched, terrified, as the invincible king was brought to his knees, smoke rising from his neck. "Gideon!" she screamed. The witch turned her head toward Tessa, her eyes pitch-black voids. "He dies because of you, girl, because you couldn't leave well enough alone." The witch flicked a finger, and a shard of glass from the floor levitated, aiming directly at Tessa's heart. "Die," the witch whispered. The glass flew. Time seemed to slow down. Tessa saw the jagged edge spinning toward her. She saw Gideon struggling against the magical bindings, his eyes wide with panic as he reached for her, too far away to stop it. Something inside Tessa snapped. It wasn't a wolf waking up. It was something older, something colder. A sensation like liquid nitrogen flooded her veins. She didn't think. She just reacted. She threw her hand up, palm open. No. The command didn't just come from her throat. It came from her soul. It was a pulse of pure white energy that exploded from her body. The glass shard stopped in midair, inches from her chest. It hovered, vibrating, before shattering into dust. The witch gasped, her concentration breaking. The green whip around Gideon's neck dissolved. "Impossible," the witch stammered, backing away. "The crescent moon. It's awake." Gideon didn't waste the opening. Freed from the binding, he lunged. He didn't shift fully. He didn't need to. He slammed the witch into the wall, his hand closing around her throat, lifting her feet off the ground. "Who sent you?" Gideon snarled, his voice a distorted growl. The witch smiled, blood trickling from her mouth. "The one who sits at your right hand, king. The one who smiles while he sharpens the knife." Before Gideon could interrogate her further, the witch's body convulsed. Green flames erupted from her eyes and mouth. It was a suicide spell. "Drop her!" Liam shouted, bursting into the room with 2 guards. Gideon threw the witch's body onto the balcony just as she exploded into a pile of ash and black feathers. Silence fell over the ruined suite. The wind howled through the broken windows. Gideon turned slowly. His shirt was shredded, his neck burned and bleeding, but he didn't care. He walked toward Tessa, who was staring at her own hands, trembling. "Tessa," he said, his voice gentle, terrified of spooking her. I stopped it," she whispered. "How did I do that? I don't have magic. I don't even have a wolf." Gideon knelt before her, ignoring his injuries. He took her hands in his. They were icy cold. "You are not just a wolf, Tessa," Gideon said intensely. "You are a crescent moon, the spirit walkers. Your ancestors were the judges of the werewolf kind. They had the power to command the elements, and to command alphas." "That's a myth," Tessa said, tears welling up. "My grandmother told me stories, but it's not a myth," Liam said, stepping over the debris. "And that burst of power just now, it was like a beacon. Every magical being within 100 miles just felt it. We have to move. Now." Gideon stood up, pulling Tessa with him. "Liam is right. The person who sent her knows she failed. They will send an army next." "Where are we going?" Tessa asked. "To the one place where I can protect you properly," Gideon said. "The royal palace in Silver City. Pack only what you need. We leave in 5 minutes." The drive to the capital was a blur of tension and speed. They took the king's private armored convoy, 3 black bulletproof SUVs, tearing down the highway at 100 miles an hour. Tessa sat in the back of the middle vehicle, sandwiched between Gideon and Liam. The king's doctor, a calm woman named Dr. Oris, was treating Gideon's neck burns in the front seat, passing back salves and bandages. Tessa watched Gideon wince as he applied the ointment. "I'm sorry," she said softly. Gideon looked at her, his amber eyes softening. "For what?" "For getting you hurt. If I hadn't brought Ash, Liam, home, none of this would be happening." Gideon reached out, tucking a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The touch sent that familiar electric jolt through her. "Tessa, look at me," he commanded. "If you hadn't brought Liam home, my brother would be dead, and I would be a grieving monster burning the world down. You didn't cause this. You saved us. The people attacking us? They have been plotting this for years. You just forced them into the light." "But who is it?" Tessa asked. "The witch said, the one who sits at your right hand." Liam turned from the window, his expression grim. "The Council of 12. They are the king's advisors. Only they knew our travel itinerary. It has to be one of them." "We are walking into a lion's den," Gideon admitted. "But it is my den, and I am the biggest lion." He looked at Tessa. "When we get there, things will be difficult. The court is a viper pit. They will try to intimidate you. They will try to make you feel small because you were raised as an omega." He leaned in closer, his face inches from hers. "Do not let them. You are a crescent moon. By blood, you outrank every single one of them. You outrank me, technically." Tessa let out a nervous laugh. "I find that hard to believe." "Believe it," Gideon said. "And there is one more thing." "What?" "Since the moment I saw you in the rain," Gideon's voice dropped to a husky whisper, "my wolf has been pacing. He recognizes you." Tessa's breath hitched. "Recognizes me as what?" "As ours," Gideon said. Before Tessa could process the weight of that word, the driver spoke up. "Approaching Silver City, my liege." Tessa looked out the window. Rising from the dark plains was a city of blinding light. Skyscrapers of glass and steel pierced the clouds, and in the center, atop a massive hill, sat the royal palace, a fortress that looked like a mix of a medieval castle and a futuristic stronghold. "Welcome home, Tessa," Liam said quietly. As the convoy passed through the massive iron gates, Tessa felt a strange sensation in her chest, a fluttering, a heat. Deep inside her mind, where there had been only silence for 20 years, a pair of golden eyes opened. "Home," a voice echoed in her head. It wasn't her voice. Tessa gasped. "What is it?" Gideon asked, instantly alert. "I heard her," Tessa whispered, clutching her chest. "My wolf. She spoke." Gideon smiled, a fierce, predatory grin. "Good. You're going to need her." The royal palace was a labyrinth of luxury and danger. For 3 days, Tessa was kept in the king's private wing, guarded by an elite squad of warriors who answered only to Gideon. She wasn't idle. Liam took it upon himself to give her a crash course in court politics, while Dr. Aris monitored her vitals as her wolf continued to wake up. It was a painful process. Her bones ached, her temperature spiked, and her senses were dialed up to an overwhelming degree. She could hear the servants whispering 3 rooms away. She could smell the fear on the delivery boy who brought her lunch. But the real test was tonight. The winter solstice ball. It was the most important event of the year, where the Council of 12 and the alphas of all the major packs gathered. "You don't have to do this," Gideon said. He was standing in the doorway of her dressing room, looking devastating in a formal black tuxedo, with the royal crest embroidered in gold on the lapel. Tessa turned away from the mirror. She was wearing a gown of deep, midnight blue silk that shimmered like water. It was backless, exposing the faint, glowing mark of the crescent moon that had begun to appear on her shoulder blade since the incident with the witch. "I can't hide in your bedroom forever, Gideon," Tessa said. "If I do, they'll say I'm weak. They'll say the king is harboring a fugitive." "Let them say it," Gideon growled, stepping into the room. "I'll rip their tongues out." "No." Tessa walked up to him, adjusting his tie. Her hands were steady. We find the traitor tonight. That was the plan, right? Gideon sighed, covering her hands with his. The plan is dangerous. We are using you as bait. I'm not bait, Tessa said, her eyes flashing with a hint of gold. I'm the trap. Gideon stared at her for a moment, then leaned down and kissed her forehead. It was a chaste kiss, but it burned like a brand. Gods, you are magnificent. Let's go. The grand ballroom was a sea of velvet, diamonds, and power. The scent of hundreds of wolves hit Tessa like a physical wall as she stood at the top of the marble staircase, her arm linked through Gideon's. Presenting, the royal announcer boomed, His Majesty, King Gideon Blackwood, and his guest, Lady Tessa Hart. The silence was instant. Hundreds of eyes turned upward. Confusion ripples through the crowd. They smelled her. She smelled like an omega, but also something else, something ancient. They descended the stairs. Gideon radiated authority, daring anyone to disrespect her. At the bottom of the stairs, the Council of 12 waited. They were a group of older, powerful alphas and lunas who helped govern the kingdom. One man stepped forward. He was tall, with silver hair and a grandfatherly smile. He wore the robes of the High Chancellor. King Gideon, the man bowed, we were relieved to hear of your safe return. Rumors of an assassination attempt were distressing. Rumors are often true, Lord Thorn, Gideon said coolly. Tessa stiffened. As Lord Thorn straightened up, a scent hit her. It was buried under layers of expensive cologne and cigar smoke, but her newly awakened senses caught it. Sulphur. Rotting flowers. It was faint, like a lingering memory, but it was there. Thorn turned his eyes to Tessa. They were cold, calculating. And this must be the young woman we've heard so much about. A rescue from a rural pack? How charitable of you, Your Majesty. She's not a charity case, Thorn, Liam interjected, stepping up beside Tessa. She is the savior of the blood. Thorn chuckled, a dry, rattling sound. Of course, a hero. Tell me, child, is it true you are unranked? An omega? He said the word omega like it was a slur. The surrounding nobles snickered quietly. Tessa felt the anger rise in her chest. But it wasn't hot and messy like before. It was cold, precise. Rank is a construct of the weak to make themselves feel strong, Lord Thorn, Tessa said, her voice clear and carrying through the hall. The snickering stopped. Thorn's smile faltered. Is that so? Thorn stepped closer, invading her personal space. He lowered his voice so only they could hear. You think because you sleep in the king's bed, you are safe? You are a mongrel, and tonight you will learn that mongrels belong outside. He turned back to the crowd. A toast! To the king! And to his pet! He raised his glass. A waiter passed a tray of champagne to Gideon and Tessa. Tessa took the glass. As she brought it to her lips, her wolf screamed in her head. Poison. Tessa froze. She looked at the champagne. It fizzed slightly differently. She looked at Thorn, who was watching her with anticipation. She looked at Gideon, who was about to drink. Don't! Tessa shouted, slapping the glass from Gideon's hand. It shattered on the floor, the liquid hissing as it ate into the marble. Acid. Concentrated wolfsbane acid. The crowd gasped. She's mad, Thorn shouted, pointing an accusing finger. She attacked the king. It was poisoned, Tessa yelled back. He tried to kill him. Lies, Thorn roared. Guards, seize this omega. She is an assassin. 4 royal guards, whose eyes were glazed over, mind-controlled, stepped forward, spears lowered at Tessa. Gideon stepped in front of her, his growl vibrating the chandeliers. Stand down! They can't hear you, my king, Thorn sneered, dropping the grandfatherly act. I have controlled them for months. just as I controlled the witch. You are weak, Gideon. You let a bitch distract you. It is time for a new alpha." Thorn ripped off his chancellor's robes, revealing battle armor underneath. "Kill them both!" The guards charged. Gideon engaged 2 of them, a whirlwind of violence. Liam jumped into the fray, tackling a 3rd. The 4th guard lunged for Tessa. She didn't have a weapon. She backed up, tripping over her gown. The guard raised his spear, the tip glistening with silver. "Now," the voice in her head roared. "Let me out." Tessa didn't fight it. She surrendered to the pull. Her bones cracked, her dress tore. In the span of a heartbeat, the human girl was gone. Standing in her place was a wolf, but it wasn't a normal wolf. She was massive, almost as big as Gideon. Her fur was pure, blinding white, glowing with an ethereal light. And on her forehead was the mark of the crescent moon, shining like a star. The guard froze, his wolf instinct screaming at him to submit. Tessa, the white wolf, opened her mouth and let out a sound that hadn't been heard in a century. It wasn't a howl. It was the voice of judgment. "Kneel." It wasn't spoken. It was projected telepathically into the mind of every single being in the room. The effect was instantaneous. The attacking guards dropped their weapons and slammed their foreheads into the floor. The nobles, the waiters, the musicians, they all fell to their knees, crushed by the weight of an aura that dwarfed even the Alpha Kings. Even Gideon and Liam, fighting their opponents, felt the urge to bow, though they managed to stay standing, staring in awe. Lord Thorn was the only one resisting. He trembled, sweat pouring down his face, his knees buckling. "No, the myths, they're dead. You can't be." Tessa stalked toward him. She moved like a ghost, silent and terrifying. She stopped inches from Thorn. She didn't attack. She simply looked at him with ancient, golden eyes. "You are found wanting," she projected. Thorn screamed as his own wolf, terrified by the presence of a superior alpha, tore itself away from his soul. The disconnection killed him instantly. He collapsed, a husk of a man, dead before he hit the ground. Tessa stood over him, panting. The glow began to fade. Her legs wobbled. Gideon was there instantly. He caught her as she shifted back into human form, naked and exhausted. He wrapped his tuxedo jacket around her, pulling her against his chest, shielding her from the eyes of the room. "Clear the hall!" Gideon roared at the stunned crowd. "Everyone out, now!" As the room scrambled to evacuate, Gideon looked down at the woman in his arms. She was unconscious, but breathing. "You were right, brother," Liam said, walking over, looking at Thorn's body. "She isn't just a queen. She's a goddess." Gideon buried his face in Tessa's hair, breathing in her scent. "She's my mate," Gideon whispered, "and God help anyone who tries to take her from me now." This is the story of Tessa Hart, the girl who was rejected for being nothing, only to reveal she was everything. She carried a dying pup through the rain, and, in return, was carried to a throne she was born to rule. The hard karma came for everyone who doubted her. Caleb is cleaning latrines, Bianca is in the mines, and Lord Thorn paid the ultimate price for his treachery. But the story isn't over. With the Crescent Moon bloodline awakened, the ancient enemies of the Spirit Walkers are stirring in the shadows. Tessa and Gideon have won the battle, but the war for the supernatural world has just begun. If you enjoyed this story of betrayal, romance, and ultimate justice, please smash that like button. It helps the channel so much. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss part 2, where we find out what happens when the rest of the world learns about the White Wolf. Share this with a friend who loves a good werewolf romance. Thanks for watching.